The old metal bell above the entrance let out a raspy, tired chime as Miles Corbin pushed open the glass door of his family's diner. A place that had once been a sanctuary of memory, built and shaped over more than 2 decades. That bell, polished by his own hands 23 years ago, was salvaged from his grandfather's country store, a modest place where generations of hard work echoed in every dusty corner. Now its chime sounded hollow, like a ghost of better days long gone. Miles no longer resembled the man immortalized in the framed photo behind the cash register, the one with the clean shave, crisp shirt, and eyes full of hope. Today he wore a faded flannel, scuffed work boots, and the unshaven stubble of 3 restless days. Life had reshaped him, like wind wears down a rock. 5 years ago, he had stepped away from this very diner to build a restaurant empire spanning 3 states. In his place, he left Trevor Walsh, his former assistant manager and someone he had once trusted with his legacy. On paper, things looked fine. Profits were steady, complaints were rare. Corporate reports painted a picture of smooth operations, but Miles had learned long ago, sometimes painfully, that numbers lie. His ex-wife had taught him that lesson well when she cleaned out their joint bank accounts while he was too busy negotiating expansion deals to notice the signs. The real reason he returned wasn't numbers. It was a voice. A trembling, tired voice over the phone from Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor who had eaten lunch at Corbin's every Tuesday for 15 years. She spoke with quiet sadness about cold meals, rude staff, and how the place no longer felt like home. That call hit him harder than any financial report ever could. Later that night, Miles sat in the dim light of his hotel room, eyes fixed on review pages he hadn't looked at in too long. Buried beneath suspiciously glowing 5-star reviews were dozens of raw, honest comments stretching back 18 months. The old staff treated you like family. These new kids just don't care. Waited 45 minutes. Food came out cold. Servers stayed glued to their phone. This place used to feel special. Now it's just another greasy spoon with an attitude. Each review felt like a tiny betrayal, a needle to the heart, because this diner, this modest tiled floor sanctuary, was never just a business to him. It was his father's dream, a dream built on honest work and warm welcomes. His father had died young, a heart attack at just 52, and Miles had sworn at his grave that Corbin's would always remain a place where people felt like they mattered, where loyalty and effort weren't just rewarded, they were honored. But now, standing inside, the heartbreak came not from grand disasters, but from the 1,000 small changes that told him everything had shifted. The warm burgundy walls were gone, replaced with sterile white, cold and impersonal like a hospital waiting room. Family photos, local high school baseball trophies, and newspaper clippings that once lined the walls had vanished. In their place were corporate posters about teamwork and customer service, soulless slogans where memories used to live. Even the music had changed. The soft classic rock that once hummed beneath conversation had been replaced by pounding, fast-paced pop. It was hard to talk over. Maybe that was the point. He slid into the corner booth, the one where he used to do algebra homework while his father manned the evening rush. The red vinyl seat was cracked, patched hastily with silver duct tape. It wasn't just worn, it was neglected. From his coat pocket, Miles pulled out a dog-eared paperback, a prop part of his quiet cover. He wasn't ready to reveal himself, not yet. He needed to see things as they really were. Soon, a young man ambled over, bleached hair, multiple piercings, an air of unearned indifference. His name tag read Brad in cheerful letters that clashed violently with the bored scowl on his face. What do you want?" Brad muttered, not even bothering to make eye contact, thumbs flying across his phone screen. A chill ran down Miles's spine. It wasn't just the disrespect, it was what it represented. A cultural rot. A decay of everything Corbin's had once stood for, now replaced by apathy and entitlement. His father's legacy wasn't dying from misfortune. It was being gutted from the inside out. Miles gripped his coffee mug, swallowing his first instinct to correct the kid's behavior. That wasn't why he was here. He had come to observe, to understand, and maybe to reclaim. "I'll have the Tuesday special," he said evenly, "and a black coffee." Brad scoffed, still focused on his screen. "We don't do the Tuesday special anymore. Too complicated. You want a burger? Or what?" Miles felt something twist in his chest. The Tuesday special, meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans, had been his father's signature dish. For 20 years, his father had cooked it every Tuesday without fail. Miles had carried that torch long after his father passed, continuing the tradition not just for consistency, but because it meant something. Now, hearing it dismissed as too complicated felt like someone taking a sledgehammer to his father's gravestone. "Then I'll take the meatloaf," he replied, voice level. Red huffed. "Dude, I just said..." "We don't have that anymore. Are you even listening?" His voice cut through the diner, drawing annoyed glances from other tables. Before Miles could respond, a woman in her early 40s appeared beside them, moving with calm urgency. Her hair was tied back neatly, and though her eyes looked tired, her smile, aimed straight at Miles, was genuine and warm. "I'm sorry about that," she said gently, casting a sharp look at Brad. "I'm Rosa. I'll be taking care of you. We do still have the meatloaf. It's not on the printed menu anymore, but I can ask the kitchen to make it special for you." Brad rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, "Rosa always makes everything complicated," before walking off without another word. Rosa sighed softly. "Apologies for that. He's still learning how to serve guests with respect." She pulled out a small notepad with practiced ease. "Meatloaf comes with mashed potatoes and green beans, just like it always has. Coffee's fresh. I made it myself 20 minutes ago." Miles studied her more closely. The way she handled the situation, with grace, quiet authority, and a calm that didn't come from training manuals but from genuine care, reminded him of Elena, the first waitress he ever hired. Elena had worked here for over a decade before retiring to Florida. She had treated the place like home. Rosa was the same. You could see it in her eyes. She wasn't just working a job, she was guarding a legacy. "That sounds perfect," Miles said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you for taking such good care of me." Rosa's smile softened even further, no longer professional, but sincere. "That's what we're here for," she said quietly. "Well, some of us anyway." She nodded toward Brad, who was now back by the counter, scrolling on his phone again while a table of customers waited, unnoticed. As Rosa turned and walked away, Miles opened his book again, but his eyes stayed fixed on the rhythm of the diner. Something was broken, not just neglected, broken on purpose. And if Miles had anything to say about it, that was about to change. Rosa's smile deepened into something genuine, like Miles had unknowingly spoken the words she'd needed to hear. "That's why I'm still here," she said softly. "Well, at least some of us are." Her eyes flicked over toward the front counter, where Brad leaned back, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs tapping rapidly while 2 tables sat unattended. As Rosa walked away, Miles opened his tattered book, pretending to read, but his eyes stayed sharp, tracking the rhythm or the dissonance of the restaurant around him. What he saw unsettled him. It was all offbeat, like a song being played in the wrong key. Veteran staff moved with quiet efficiency, while the newer employees drifted like unmoored boats, unsure of where to go or what to do. Gone were the familiar jokes shared between regulars and servers. Gone were the warm greetings, the recognition, the simple joy of being remembered. In its place was sterile politeness, surface-level smiles, and the aching emptiness of something that had once been deeply loved and was now hollowed out. Rosa was right. So was Mrs. Patterson. Something here wasn't just wrong, it had been intentionally broken. And Miles, heart tightening with guilt and determination, made a silent promise. He would uncover the truth. He would find out exactly what had happened to his father's legacy while he'd been too distracted chasing something bigger. When the meatloaf finally arrived, the scent hit him like a memory. It was perfect, tender, savory, with the rich tang of Worcestershire in the gravy, just as his father had always made it. Rosa hadn't missed a single detail. And yet everything around him felt foreign. This wasn't Corbin's. Not really. It looked like it, but the soul of it, the warmth, the honor, it was missing. Someone had dressed up a stranger in his family's skin. The next day, during the lunchtime rush, Miles returned. This time, he chose a booth with a direct view of the kitchen pass, the heart of any restaurant's flow. What he witnessed made his stomach twist. Rosa moved like a dancer in a war zone, balancing 3 full plates in one arm, coffee pot in the other, navigating through the chaos with practiced precision. Her forehead glistened with sweat, but her smile never wavered. She wore grace like armor, shielding the cracks forming underneath. Across the room, Brad lounged near the register, laughing with a bleach-blonde girl who looked barely 19. "Tiffany, babe, don't worry about table 6, Brad said loud enough for half the diner to hear. "They're all old folks. They don't tip anyway." Tiffany giggled, twirling a lock of hair around her finger. "You're so bad," she teased. "Trevor said I only have to handle the easy tables until I get the hang of it." Miles' hand tightened around his coffee mug. Trevor, his trusted lieutenant, the man he'd left in charge of this sacred place, was hand-picking shifts, stacking the deck in favor of the young and connected, while people like Rosa carried the full weight of the restaurant on their backs. A middle-aged man in a high-vis vest waved from a corner booth. "Excuse me, I've been waiting 20 minutes for my check." Rosa looked up from the milkshake she was making. Panic flickered across her face. 4 tables were still waiting for food, 2 more hadn't even ordered, and now this. She froze for just a heartbeat, shoulders sagged. Then she straightened up, grabbed her notepad, and rushed to the man's table. "I'll be right with you, sir," she called out with practiced calm. "This is ridiculous," the man barked. "You're running around like crazy while those 2 over there just stand around laughing. What kind of place is this?" He pointed directly at Brad and Tiffany, who were now watching a video on Brad's phone, completely oblivious to the tension unraveling around them. A few nearby customers began to stare. Rosa's cheeks flushed crimson with shame. "I truly apologize for the wait," Rosa said, still keeping her voice composed. "Your lunch is on the house today." "I don't want it for free," the man snapped. "I just want decent service. I've been coming here for 10 years. It's never been this bad." As he left, Miles watched Rosa tremble slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper. Exhaustion, fury, helplessness. She wasn't just tired. She was being worn down piece by piece. She was fighting to hold together something that meant everything to her, and she was fighting alone. She returned to the counter, barely catching her breath, when Miles overheard a conversation that would haunt him for days. "Girl, you look like you're about to drop," said an older woman, Carmen, from the afternoon shift, counting out her tip money nearby. Rosa glanced around, hesitant, then leaned in close. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," Rosa whispered, her voice low and hollow. It carried the weight of 100 silent frustrations. "They cut my hours again last week, down to 25 from 35. I'm doing twice the work for less money. Meanwhile, Brad's girlfriend gets trained on the easy stuff while I deal with every rude customer." Carmen's expression darkened, her hands pausing over the cash. "You've been here 8 years, Rosa," she said quietly. "Besides Jerry in the kitchen, No one knows this place better than you." Then her voice dropped to a hush. "I overheard Trevor talking to the district manager. Said the old staff cost too much. Said we're stuck in our ways and it's time for younger energy." The bite of Miles's apple pie turned to ash in his mouth. So that was it. Trevor wasn't just playing favorites. He was dismantling the foundation, deliberately pushing out the very people who had built Corbin's with their sweat and sacrifice. The talk of budget cuts, a lie, a cover story to replace loyalty with cheap labor, tied to nepotism. "You know what really gets to me?" Rosa's voice cracked a little. "Yesterday, I spent 2 hours training Tiffany on the computer system. 2 hours. She kept stopping to text. Today she gets the prime dinner shift, and I'm stuck on the breakfast rush and all the cranky afternoon tables." And when Mrs. Henderson complained about her attitude, Trevor just shrugged and said, "She's still learning." Carmen let out a bitter laugh. "Learning what? How to insult regulars who've been coming here since before she was born? I've worked in this business 30 years, and now I'm getting lectured by a girl who doesn't know the difference between medium rare and well done." A loud crash rang out from the kitchen, the unmistakable sound of dishes breaking. Instinct took over. Both women immediately sprang into action, setting aside their grief like veterans returning to the battlefield. But Miles had heard enough. He remained in that booth for another hour, silently watching. What he saw was a grotesque hierarchy masquerading as a restaurant. Brad and Tiffany hovered near the easy tables, young customers, simple orders, predictable tips. Rosa and Carmen, they took the misfits, the complicated tickets, the needy customers. They were the safety net Trevor never thanked, only exploited. When a group of college students came in, Brad beelined to them, all charm and grins. Rosa, meanwhile, was left to assist an elderly couple who struggled to read the laminated menu. And then it happened. A customer spilled coffee on Tiffany's shoes. Instead of handling it with grace, she huffed, rolled her eyes, and stomped away. Rosa knelt down silently, mopping up the mess while managing 2 other tables. Her face flushed red, not from anger, but from the humiliation of being forced to clean up after someone who should never have been hired in the first place. Tiffany leaned against Brad, complaining loudly about her gross customers and ruined shoes. And just then, Miles saw something that froze him in place. Trevor Walsh emerged from the back office. He looked heavier than before. Thinner hair, same cold eyes. He scanned the room like a king surveying his crumbling kingdom. Then he walked directly to Brad and Tiffany, clapping Brad on the shoulder with fatherly pride. The 3 of them laughed about something Miles didn't want to hear. Then Trevor's eyes found Rosa, still kneeling, still scrubbing, and the look on his face wasn't concern. It was satisfaction. He enjoyed seeing her on her knees. In that moment, Miles understood. This wasn't just poor management. This wasn't neglect. This was premeditated cruelty, a strategic destruction of everything that had once made Corbin's a home. Miles left a generous tip beneath his cup, stood, and walked out. But his mind stayed locked in that room, in the wreckage of a legacy he could no longer ignore. He was done watching. It was time to fight. A young man walked through the diner doors like he owned the place, no older than 20, with hair slicked back and a designer outfit that screamed arrogance more than style. "Uncle Trevor," he called loudly as Trevor stepped out of the back office. "Thanks for hooking me up with the prime shift," the kid grinned. "Way easier than my last job. This is going to be a breeze." A chill crept down Miles Corbin's spine. This wasn't just favoritism. It was a takeover, one flying the flag of nepotism. Trevor was turning Corbin's, the restaurant Miles had built from scratch, into a family-run employment agency for people who had no business being there. "No problem, Kyle," Trevor said casually, clapping his nephew on the back. "Rosa will show you the ropes tonight. She knows everything." Miles watched Rosa's expression darken. Her lips tightened. Her posture stiffened. She didn't say a word, but her eyes said everything. She understood. She was being asked to train her own replacement. Kyle looked her up and down with thinly veiled disrespect. Yeah, I'm sure it's not that hard. An hour later, Kyle had already botched 3 orders, spilled wine on a customer's jacket, and argued with the table over the price of dessert. And every mistake? It landed squarely on Rosa's shoulders. Table 12 still hasn't gotten their appetizers. Trevor barked across the dining room, loud enough for every guest to hear. I thought you were training Kyle. I am, sir, but... Rosa began, her voice measured and calm. No excuses, Trevor snapped. If Kyle messes up, it's because you didn't train him right. Maybe. You're just not management material after all. For a second, Rosa's face crumpled, the defeat flickering in her eyes like a flame about to go out. But she recovered quickly, standing tall, swallowing the humiliation like she'd done so many times before. Miles saw the truth crystal clear. This woman was holding the diner together with her bare hands, while Trevor systematically tore it apart from the inside. That night, just before closing, Miles overheard Kyle talking to Tiffany near the back counter. Uncle Trevor already told me I'll be assistant manager in 6 months, Kyle boasted, scrolling through his phone instead of cleaning his assigned tables. These old-timers think they're important, but they're just dead weight. Trevor's gonna clean house and put people like us in charge. Tiffany tilted her head. What about Rosa? She seems to know everything. Kyle snorted. She's gone soon. Uncle Trevor already lined up her replacement, my girlfriend from community college. Rosa just doesn't know it yet. Trevor likes letting people think they have a shot before he pulls the rug out. A wave of cold washed over Miles's chest. This wasn't mismanagement. This was premeditated cruelty, a campaign of quiet, calculated destruction. Loyalty, pride, dignity. Trevor was gutting it all, and doing it with a smile. Miles stood up, silently, steadily, and dangerously calm. He started making calls. To journalists, to business partners, to the employment lawyer who still owed him a favor. Trevor wanted to play power games with people's livelihoods. Corbin was about to show him what real power looked like. Trevor Walsh thought he was untouchable, shielded by distance and phony reports. He had no idea that a storm had been building. Quiet, steady, ruthless. And now it was here. Saturday morning. In a modest hotel room just a few blocks from the diner, Miles paced like a lion in a cage, phone to his ear, voice low and focused. Call after call, names, favors, leverage. By noon he had a plan, one that would require strategy, patience, and someone trustworthy on the inside. He needed an insider, a pair of eyes, a witness. And then the answer came from the unlikeliest place. Jerry Matsumoto, a quiet, reserved young man who had worked the kitchen for 6 years, ever since dropping out of culinary school to take care of his sick mother. Miles remembered hiring him. A humble kid who chopped vegetables faster than anyone, who never complained about heat or hours, who treated the back line like sacred ground. Now, watching Jerry through the bath's window during the Saturday dinner rush, Miles barely recognized him. The fire was still there, but buried, dimmed. Jerry moved like someone trying to disappear, like invisibility was the only way to survive. After the crowd died down, Miles slipped around the side of the building. Out back, Jerry was on a smoke break, leaning against the wall in silence. Sorry, this area's for employees only, Jerry said quickly, dropping his cigarette and grinding it out with his heel. Not here to cause trouble, Miles said calmly. Actually, I was hoping you might help me with something. Jerry turned slightly, eyes flicking to the back door, then back to Miles. His face tightened, skeptical but not unfriendly. There was something else there, too. Relief. Like someone had finally noticed. I don't know what you mean, Jerry replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Miles took a calculated risk. I've seen the way Rosa works. Compared to Kyle, I know you've seen more than I have. From inside the kitchen. There was a pause, a long one. Then Jerry let out a heavy sigh, shoulders dropping just a bit. You're not some health inspector or corporate spy, are you? Miles shook his head. Just a customer. But one who cares about this place. It used to be special. Jerry looked away, eyes clouded with something more than fatigue, mourning. Oh, it really was, he whispered. My first year here, it felt like family. Mr. Corbin, the real owner, he used to stop by every month, knew everyone's name, asked about our moms, our dogs, and now he trailed off, then made a decision. Can you meet me early tomorrow, before my shift? There are things you need to see. Sunday, 5:30 a.m. Miles sat in a rented car outside a worn apartment complex. Jerry walked out, laptop bag slung over one shoulder, eyes a mix of fear and resolve. I've been documenting this for months, he said as he climbed in, pulling out his phone and opening his files. At first, it was just habit, but then things got so bad, I figured I might need proof. What he showed Miles was like a punch to the gut. Screenshots from the staff group chat, Kyle and his friends mocking veteran workers, messages about getting rid of the old guard, photos of the scheduling board, showing a pattern of hours being slashed for loyal staff while newcomers got prime shifts. Jerry tapped to a specific exchange. This one's from right after Carmen asked for time off to take her daughter to the doctor. Trevor's message read, "These old workers think they can make demands? Time to remind them who's boss." Kyle had replied with laughing emojis and a comment. Finally, dead weight starting to sink. Miles clenched his fists. But Jerry wasn't done. There's more, he said quietly. I help with inventory, so I see the budget reports. Trevor's been lying about labor costs. He opened a spreadsheet and told everyone we had to cut hours because payroll was too high. But look, actual labor spending is under budget. He's using the money to pay inflated wages to family. Miles stared. Kyle, unqualified, incompetent, was making more per hour than Rosa. Then Jerry's voice dropped even lower. I overheard Trevor last week, on the phone with his wife. He's planning to fire Rosa this Friday, right before the weekend rush. Said he wants to send a message to the other old-timers. No one is safe. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just manipulation. It was theft of wages, of dignity, of legacy. Jerry, Miles said firmly, locking eyes with him. Would you be willing to testify? To tell the real owner what's been happening here? Jerry blinked. You know Mr. Corbin? Miles handed him a business card. Jerry stared at it. His jaw dropped. Oh my God. You're him. Miles nodded. And Trevor Walsh has no idea what's coming. Friday, 11 o'clock a.m. Outside Corbin's, trucks pulled into the parking lot. Tables, chairs, a small stage. A glossy banner was hung across the windows. Customer Appreciation Lunch, 12 o'clock p.m. Free food and prizes. Trevor had been suspicious when a marketing company called to plan the event, but the promise of free PR and potential praise from corporate headquarters was too tempting to resist. He had no idea that by the time the microphones turned on, his entire empire was about to crumble. What Trevor didn't know? 3 local news stations had already set up outside, their cameras ready and rolling. A prominent food columnist stood near the front, notebook in hand. Dozens of longtime customers filled the diner booths, each one personally invited. Jerry had gone even further, quietly reaching out to former employees, asking them to come. And in the second booth by the window sat Mrs. Patterson, cane by her side, her eyes sharp with anticipation. The woman who'd made the very first call, the spark that brought Miles home, was right there to see how it would all end. 12 o'clock noon sharp. Trevor stepped up to the microphone with all the swagger of a man expecting a plaque in his name. "Welcome everyone to Corbin's Family Diner," he said, his voice confident, palms raised like a preacher. "I'm Trevor Walsh, the executive director here, and today—" "Excuse me," came a voice that sliced through the air like a blade. The crowd turned. Miles Corbin stepped forward from the audience, removing a fake mustache with a slow, deliberate motion that had the room holding its breath. "I believe there's been a little misunderstanding." "In gas." Trevor froze mid-sentence. For a few seconds, his face cycled through confusion, realization, and pure, unfiltered panic. Miles?" he stammered, sounding like a boy caught sneaking out after curfew. What are you doing here?" "I was in California," Miles said, stepping up and effortlessly taking the mic from Trevor's trembling hands, "until I started getting some very troubling calls." He turned to the room, his voice calm but commanding. "My name is Miles Corbin. This diner bears my name, and I am its rightful owner. And today, I've got a few things to share." The projector, which had been loaded with PR slides of smiling employees and family-friendly meals, suddenly flickered to life, revealing something else entirely. Screenshots from the staff group chat. Ugly, arrogant, cruel. "This," Miles said, pointing to the screen, "is what my so-called executive director really thinks of the people who built this place." He turned toward the kitchen. "Jerry, would you read the message from March 15th? Jerry stepped out from the back, his hands slightly shaking, but his voice was steady, clear, and resolute. Trevor Walsh wrote. Jerry began. "These old employees think they can make demands. Time to show them who's in charge." He glanced at the crowd, then continued. Cal Walsh, his nephew, replied with laughing emojis and called the veteran staff deadweight. The room fell into an eerie silence. Then whispers. Then a rumble of voices, building into a wave of anger, murmurs of, "I knew it," and "That's why they left," spread like wildfire. Faces turned hard, jaws clenched. And then Mrs. Patterson stood. Her voice shook, but not from fear. "Rosa Martinez has served my family for 8 years, she said, stepping forward. "She remembers my grandson's favorite pancakes. She checks on my arthritis every Tuesday. How dare you call her a burden?" Miles nodded with quiet gratitude, then clicked to the next slide, the payroll records. "Ever told everyone labor costs were too high, that we had to cut hours. But this," he said, pointing to the budget charts, "is the truth. We were under budget. He invented a crisis to demote the most loyal employees and replace them with his own family, at inflated wages." Ever tried to step forward, to interject now, "Hold on." But Miles raised a hand, firm and final. His nephew, Kyle, with no restaurant experience, who spilled drinks on customers and argued over menu prices, makes more than Rosa Martinez. Rosa, who has worked here for 8 years, who's never once had a complaint. Miles's voice dropped, chilling the air. Would anyone like to guess why? The crowd erupted. People stood from their seats. Customers shouted stories of seeing Rosa run tables alone while Kyle played on his phone. Former employees stepped forward, sharing how they'd been pushed out, overlooked, disrespected. News cameras caught every word, every face. Miles turned back to the screen. "This," he said quietly, "is the final piece." He hit play. Trevor's voice crackled over the speakers, recorded without his knowledge from a late-night phone call to his wife. "These people think loyalty means something? I'm firing Rosa next Friday, right before the weekend rush. That'll teach the others not to question me. By Christmas, this place will be run by people who understand who's really in charge." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Rosa stood by the coffee station, her hand clutching a tray, eyes glistening, not from pain, but from long overdue relief. Carmen, by her side, took her hand and squeezed tight. Two women who had carried this diner through storms, now standing taller than they had in years. Miles looked straight into the news camera lenses. This isn't just about one bad manager. This is about what happens when we let bullies tear down what we love. He turned slowly to Trevor, who now stood pale, sweating, backing away toward the exit like a man watching his world burn. Corbin's was built on honest work, loyalty, and treating people with dignity, Miles said, and Trevor Walsh nearly destroyed it in under 2 years. He paused. Then, "You're fired. Security will escort you out. Your nephew and his friends can collect their final paychecks tomorrow." Applause erupted, loud, cathartic, deafening. Trevor stumbled toward the door, his kingdom of favoritism and fraud collapsing like a house of cards. And Miles, he wasn't finished, not by a long shot. 3 months later, Miles sat in his favorite corner booth, the same one where he'd first seen the cracks in Corbin's. But now the warm burgundy walls had returned. The black and white photos of community baseball games and holiday potlucks lined the shelves again. Classic rock floated through the air like an old friend humming in your ear. But the real changes, they couldn't be painted or framed. They were walking. "You talking?" Smiling. Rosa approached with a grin that said more than words could ever say. Her uniform looked sharp, but it was the manager's badge pinned to her chest that truly gleamed. "The usual, Mr. Corbin?" she asked playfully, though they both knew she meant his father's Tuesday special, meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. Miles grinned. "Actually, I'm feeling adventurous. What does our new floor supervisor recommend?" Her smile widened. She had a raise now, the power to schedule, hire, train, based on merit, not bloodlines, and she'd use that power wisely. "Jerry's working on a new breakfast special," she said. "Corbin's Country Benedict, house-made biscuits, local sausage, farm eggs. It's a winner." Miles nodded. Jerry, now assistant kitchen manager, led a team that cooked with pride. His promotion wasn't just a reward for loyalty, it was a testament to his courage when it counted most. As Rosa walked off, Miles glanced around. The story of Corbin's had gone national, used in business seminars and HR conferences. Not as a tale of scandal, but one of rescue, of resilience. Other locations in the chain had followed suit. Audits, policy changes, staff turnover based not on age, but on attitude. Trevor, now facing charges for employment fraud, wage theft, and fiduciary abuse. Kyle, viral for the wrong reasons, unemployable in most kitchens. But Miles didn't smile for that. His pride was in Carmen, now training coordinator, guiding new hires through both job skills and the heart behind them. In Marcus, the nursing student/waiter, juggling single fatherhood and double shifts. In the laughter that once again echoed between booths. His phone buzzed. Text from the district manager. Customer satisfaction up 23%, revenue up 18%. Other branches want your system. He put the phone away and picked up his fork. The revolution hadn't come with fury. It had come with something stronger, restoration. Fair hours, real raises, no favoritism, just work done with heart and recognized with respect. Jerry emerged from the kitchen with the country Benedict, plated to perfection, garnished with chives, Rosa had suggested. "Looks incredible," Miles said. "Jerry, are you still interested in finishing culinary school?" Jerry's face lit up. "Yes, sir, but I can't afford to take time off." Miles leaned forward. "What if I told you we've launched an education assistance program? Full tuition, flexible hours, guaranteed head chef spot when you graduate." Jerry's smile could have lit up the entire block. "Then that would change everything." Miles took a bite of the Benedict, savored the layers of flavor. Egg, sausage, biscuit, pride. This was the dream his father had planted, a place where people came not just to eat, but to belong. Outside, Mrs. Patterson walked in for her Tuesday lunch. This time, she was met with a smile that was real, with staff who cared, with a diner that had found its way home again. The reckoning? Complete. But the restoration? Only just beginning. Jerry emerged from the kitchen, holding the plate like it was a piece of art. The country Benedict, golden biscuits, farm-fresh eggs, local sausage, sat perfectly arranged beneath a drizzle of velvety hollandaise. His chef's coat was spotless, but it was the pride in his eyes that made him glow, like sunlight pouring through a window at daybreak. Rosa suggested a little chive garnish, he said, setting the plate down gently. "Hope that looks okay." Miles looked up, smile spreading slowly, deeply. "Jerry, that looks like it belongs on the cover of Bon Appetit." Then, more softly, more deliberately, "Do you still want to finish culinary school?" Jerry's expression lit up like someone had finally asked the question he'd been waiting to answer his whole life. "Absolutely, sir," he said without hesitation. "But I can't afford to stop working, not right now." Miles reached out, resting a steady hand on the young man's shoulder. There was something paternal in the gesture. Not charity, but belief, recognition. "What if I told you Corbin's has a new tuition support program, flexible hours, full coverage, and when you graduate, the head chef position is yours, guaranteed?" For a moment, Jerry just stood there, frozen between disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. Then the smile came. Big, honest, blinding. That would change everything. Miles nodded, then picked up his fork and took a bite of the Benedict. The flavors danced together, tender, smoky, rich. But it wasn't just the dish he was tasting. It was hope. Hope that didn't just live in words, but in choices. In restored dignity, in a promise kept across generations. Outside, through the freshly cleaned window, Mrs. Patterson was arriving for her usual Tuesday lunch, just as she had for the last 15 years. Only this time, she would be greeted not by forced smiles or robotic service, but by Rosa's genuine warmth, by a team that gave a damn, by a place that had found its soul again. The purge was done, but the rebirth, it was only just beginning.